Prime Minister Mark Carney and the country's premiers are heading to Saskatoon this weekend for their first in-person meeting since the Liberals' re-election. And Carney has set high expectations. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says before they meet, Carney asked each premier for a list of 5 projects they want built. And Carney could select which ones to fast-track.
I believe that he's going to pick a few right across the country that will have a great impact, not just nationally, but also provincially and with the territories as well. One has to be the pipelines. We can't be relying on the U.S. any longer. We have to start building pipelines west, north, and east.
Joining me now is New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt. Premier Holt, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here today.
Always good to see you, David.
I wonder if you can give us some clarity on exactly what we're going to see or the process that we're going to see on Monday. The Prime Minister has suggested we're going to get some specific projects that have been fast-tracked for approval or picked to be fast-tracked for approval. Do the premiers know what projects are going to be fast-tracked? How is this going to roll out on Monday?
Well, I believe we're going to use our time together on Monday to get to that final decision point. There are so many great projects out there and so many opportunities to engage in nation building, the development of trade and energy corridors, that there's lots on the table. And I think that hopefully collectively we can whittle that down to the best number, the best handful that the federal government's really going to throw their weight behind and help us move fast.
Okay, so the way you understand it then is and as I understand it as well, I guess, is people have been pitching projects, specific projects. The provinces have come up with various short lists, and is everybody in on the decision together looking at different things, or is it like New Brunswick makes a pitch or the Atlantic makes a pitch and they work with just the federal government on it? How does that whittle down to an actual decision getting made here?
Yeah, I think it'll be like the Hunger Games. I think that we've all submitted our individual provinces' priorities, and so I think those have been under consideration, and some of the strongest ones have bubbled up. We're now having the conversations about regional opportunities to collaborate and work amongst our neighboring provinces, and so I think we'll discuss those on Monday. And we anticipate also hearing from the Prime Minister about which ones are resonating most with him and his team. And so I expect that by the end of all the discussions, we'll have some clarity on which ones we're going to move forward with.
So what can you tell us about what New Brunswick has pitched? I know from, various people out east, I've heard that there is maybe sort of an evolution of the old Atlantic Loop concept being batted around, and with the Premier of Quebec pushing for help with Gull Island, for example, in Labrador as a project to develop. Where do you think the New Brunswick play will go, and maybe more regionally?
Well, New Brunswick has lots of opportunity that aligns directly with what the Prime Minister is trying to do. I think we saw that in the speech from the throne, where they talked about housing. New Brunswick is the leader in modular housing and fabrication. They talked about minerals. You and I have talked before about how New Brunswick has 21 of those critical minerals that we need for the green economy, for defense. We've talked about defense. And then for us, one of the gems in New Brunswick is our ports. The Port of St. John and the Port of Beldoon that work together see so many containers coming in. We now have brand new cold storage wharf side that connects to rail. That rail transports tons of goods into the U.S., actually from Eastern Canada to Saskatchewan to Vancouver. So strengthening that critical piece of trade infrastructure was one of our big asks. There's hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that we could make in improving the access to international markets, because we're working with leading shipping partners like Hapag-Lloyd, like DP World that runs the port, our partners at CPKC. We have a gem of trade infrastructure that's going to help Canadians reach new markets. And so we put that up on our list. And I won't let the cat out of the bag yet on what our group of Eastern leaders are talking about doing together.
Okay, but am I on the right track when I talk about energy? It seems like green energy and stable prices, long-term green prices. That seems like that's been
definitely
sort of the
energy focused. There's lots of opportunity in the East. We generate a lot of energy, and in different types of energy. In New Brunswick, we've got nuclear, we've got bio, we've got wind, we've got solar, we've got hydro, and so do our neighboring provinces. And so we're going to be putting all that together in the way that I think will be really attractive to the Prime Minister and the team.
So there's this initial push coming at the First Minister's table to move a first wave of projects, to accelerate those. Then there's also the bigger legislative push that the Prime Minister is making, expected to give the Premiers more info on this bill to fast-track approvals of projects in the national interest, as he's calling them, get the approval process down from 5 years to 2. There's been some concern that after moving too slow, maybe we could end up in a situation where we start going too fast as a country. Provincial jurisdiction, Indigenous consultation, environmental considerations. How do you calibrate it so that it doesn't create a problem in the other direction?
Isn't that some of the art of politics is finding that balance? I think there's some hard lines here. Canada has rigorous environmental standards, and those aren't going to be softened. But we've been used to doing provincial environmental approvals and then federal environmental approvals, and why those aren't aligned to one environmental approval. I think now's the time to do that. Certainly here in New Brunswick, we have been working really closely with First Nations leaders and communities to rebuild what had been a broken relationship, and to really enter into partnerships to do this work together. So we're excited about some of the projects that the First Nations communities here are putting forward around renewable energy and other resource opportunities that we're going to explore together. So I think this is a time where we can go faster than we've been going. But you're right; it's how fast. You want to make sure that you're not leaving anybody behind as you pick up the pace.
I'm not trying to put a gray cloud inside a silver lining on this, but that is an issue where you see the potential for challenges, right? Where relationships are going to have to be managed, and certainly legal rights are going to need to be upheld in this. There's also the challenge, though you described it as the Hunger Games, Premier. Everybody's together when everybody thinks they can get their project, but once you start picking winners and losers, there are losers at the table. I mean, are you worried about that? Or do you think this is just about an initial first wave and then it becomes just an overall culture of accelerated development?
Well, I do hope it's the latter. And I think all of us understand that we're not all going to get what we want out of this. And I think New Brunswick has lots of opportunity for projects that are really going to benefit our neighbors. And we also have great relationships with my colleagues here in the Atlantic and with Quebec. And so I'm excited by what we're able to agree on. And so I think, as I joke that it's Hunger Games because we like to have fun as Canada's premiers, and we act sometimes a lot like siblings in the mix, but we know it's better for all of us when we all succeed. And so we're looking for those projects that do have real benefit for everyone. And I'm pleased the Prime Minister is also driving for the same thing, right? We don't want to leave people out. Some people may have larger roles to play, other people may have smaller roles to play.
Right.
But I think you're right that this is just a first wave. We're going to see the National Trade Corridors Fund get rolled out. We've seen them talk about massive housing acceleration support they want to do. So there's a few different ways to get at the ultimate objective of the kind of economic growth and acceleration that sees all Canadians get a piece of this prosperity we're trying to build.
The pace and the urgency here, Premier, I mean, is it as real on the inside as it looks from the outside, that this will move fast, things will start going quickly, and the intention seems to be to sustain it? How do you read it in terms of the sustainability of what is being proposed here and how it can work at the First Minister's table?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, we'd like to see things move more quickly, and generally, provinces are more nimble than the federal government, the same way municipalities are more nimble than provinces. As you get sort of smaller and closer to people, your ability to move fast increases. But I think the willingness is there, and I think it's a bit of a pendulum, right? We were going too slow. We're going to swing to try to go really fast. It'll probably stabilize, somewhere in the middle, and we'll find ourselves ahead of where we were yesterday.
Where is your nimbleness as a province on the issue of trade barriers, though, Premier? Because the last time we spoke, there were a couple of things, on fish and forestry, that probably aren't going to go away no matter how long it takes, depending on where you are in the province. I know in Newfoundland and Labrador, in an election year, minimum processing requirements for land to fish are just not going to come off the table because you will lose the election if you do that. But, Mark Carney is going to table legislation, certainly in the coming weeks, to get rid of it all at the federal level. Where do you think the premiers are going to be by July 1? And when the Prime Minister says we want to have one economy instead of 13, will we fully have one economy, or be closer to one economy and still little bits of 12 or 13 other ones?
Well, I hope we'll have a brand new Canada Free Trade Agreement that we've all signed on to that will have a heck of a lot less of those pages of exemptions than it currently does. And actually, where New Brunswick stands on this is I think we've shown ourselves to be one of the most nimble, because we came to that very first federal, provincial, territorial meeting, having already removed a bunch of our exemptions in a cabinet meeting quicker than any other province could. And we're going to have legislation that reaches royal assent next Friday that advances the labor mobility and the booze pieces. We've signed mutual recognition agreements with Ontario, with Newfoundland. So we've demonstrated that we can move quickly because there's a lot of shared interest here. I think we want to all recognize each other's goods, harmonize the standards so that that truck carrying that product can move from, the coast of PEI to the coast of Vancouver without barrier or cost or red tape. So I'm optimistic we're going to make some big strides here, but we're not looking for perfect. We can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. We're looking to make progress as much as we can, recognizing that some things, like you mentioned, Newfoundland's fishery, we could knock our head against a wall trying to battle that, or we could get some other things done. And so I'm impressed with what we've been able to get done so far. And the team in New Brunswick here has demonstrated themselves to be really nimble and responsive. And I appreciate actually that our opposition in the legislature has been supportive of the moves that we've tried to make, because they see the benefit of opening up New Brunswick's market to workers from everywhere and alcohol products from everywhere. So we're moving on this.
Okay, so just to end this, Premier, where we started, if we can, to get back to the projects we're going to hear about on Monday, what's your sense of, we'll get the list, we'll get the names, we'll get those specifics. What's your sense of how quickly we'll see shovels in the ground? Things actually moving on these things. Are we talking about projects that happen later this summer, later this year, or by next year? Without knowing the final list, I suppose, it's impossible to say with absolute certainty, but what's your sense of the timeframes we're talking about here?
Yeah, I love that question, David, because certainly New Brunswick tried really hard to put forward the kind of projects that we could move on tomorrow. So things like the development of our port, the project at Sims Corner to get that rail up so that we can move 10,000-foot trains through without causing the kind of impediments to the neighbors in St. John that we're doing now. Design work's been done, we've got it costed, and so if we get the green light, that thing's going to move tomorrow. I think there's varying degrees of readiness of the projects that have been presented. There's some that are like ours, ready to go tomorrow. There's others that there's, I think I saw, there's an agreement to plan and identify and build out. And so we were keen to put forward things that we knew we could move on tomorrow. And we're hopeful that makes them that much more attractive for the federal government to say yes to.
But even on those longer term ones, I suppose it's important to give them the certainty, the private sector companies, so they can start putting the capital towards it, so they know they're not going to get bogged down in the red tape and have this all fall apart. We'll find out on Monday, I suppose. Well, Premier, I'll see you.
A lot of this is about exactly that. You've nailed it. It's creating the environment that's attractive to investment. So that certainty, the kind of infrastructure investments we want to make are what's going to make Canada really attractive and New Brunswick really attractive to people who want to invest in our trade and our energy assets and more.
All right. Well, Premier, thanks for joining us today. I'll see you in Saskatoon if the wildfire situation holds and the meeting's able to go ahead. We'll see you there. Thanks for talking to us.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, David.